All right, so welcome back to The Deep Dive, where we like to take a deep dive. And today we are going to be talking about, well, we're going to be taking a deep dive into a really cool proposal.
Yeah,
Yeah, so this is something that I think is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners.
I think so too.
And we've got a very, very detailed proposal, and you've been kind of sifting through it. We've been talking offline about this, and we're calling this deep dive Bag Buddy.
Bag buddy.
So tell us a little bit, before we get into the meat of this, tell us, what is the Bag Buddy proposal all about?
Well, it is a plan for a mobile app that's going to help travelers to size their luggage using their smartphone, and they'll be able to compare it to a central database that has all the airline policies.
That is such a great idea because,
I know.
I'm always the one who's like right at the ticket counter or whatever, and they're like, your bag's too big. And I'm like, what?
Exactly. And this will help you to avoid that.
Yeah, I need this like yesterday.
Me too.
So yeah, let's just get right into it. I mean, this is a pretty dense proposal. So what are some of the things that really stood out to you about this?
Well, this team, they really approached this the right way.
Okay.
They started by thinking about their business case, and they broke it down into three very important aspects: user needs, market potential, and technical feasibility.
So, like, is there actually a need for this? Are people going to use it?
Exactly.
Is it something that can actually be made?
Exactly. And is there space for it?
Okay.
So they actually started with user interviews,
Yeah.
which is a very smart move.
Okay.
And they interviewed 20 different users from a wide variety of ages and technology skills
Okay.
to kind of get an overall feel for what the average traveler would be looking for.
Okay.
And what they found is that people were very confused about the baggage size restrictions.
Right.
Different airlines, different
Classes.
classes, right?
It's ridiculous.
It is.
It is.
So they're trying to address that.
Okay. So there is a need, and they proved that right.
They did.
20 people is a decent sample size for this kind of thing.
It is for this stage.
Yeah. Okay.
So they also looked at the market potential,
Okay.
and they determined that there wasn't really an app out there doing this.
So they're not competing with anyone yet.
Not directly, no.
Okay.
And they also pointed out that air travel is seeing a resurgence in popularity.
Right.
So the timing for this is really good.
Like coming out of the pandemic.
Exactly.
Everybody wants to travel now.
They do.
Okay.
And they did some market research. They found that there are about 22,200 searches per month for things like airline luggage size restrictions.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that shows that there's definitely interest out there.
People are actively looking for a solution.
They are.
Okay.
So finally, they looked at the technical feasibility of this app.
Okay, so is this something that's actually doable, or is it just like a pie-in-the-sky idea?
It's totally doable.
Okay.
The technology that they need is readily available on smartphones today.
Really?
Things like camera scanning, dimension calculation, and policy comparison.
Interesting. Okay.
So that's a really good sign. It means that the development costs are probably going to be relatively low.
That makes sense.
And it also means that they won't need to use any cutting-edge AI or anything like that.
So that's a good thing for us, because then the app's not going to cost like $100 or something like that.
Exactly.
Right.
So they really made sure to cover all those bases before they even got into the actual planning.
Okay. So it sounds like they really did their homework in terms of figuring out, like, is this a viable idea?
Absolutely.
So now let's get into the planning part. Like, how are they going to actually make this happen?
Okay.
So the proposal outlines like a pretty structured plan,
It does.
and they're focusing on several key areas, like the schedule, the scope, the risks, the budget, and how they're going to communicate everything.
Exactly. So this proposal covers all of the planning aspects.
Okay.
It's important to remember they haven't actually started development yet.
Got it.
This is all pre-development.
So this is like the blueprint.
It is.
Okay.
It is. Okay, so let's look at the core features of the app that they have planned.
Okay.
So the app will use your smartphone camera to scan your luggage. It compares the dimensions to the airline's policy, and then it gives you a really clear pass or fail indication.
So you'll know right then and there
Right then and there.
whether you're good to go or not.
You'll know if you need to repack
Exactly.
or pay those fees.
Okay.
They also are going to allow you to select the airline and the type of bag, whether it's a carry-on personal item or checked luggage.
Okay, so this is all stuff that came out of the user interviews.
Yes, a lot of the non-functional requirements came from those interviews.
What does non-functional requirements mean?
That means the things that the user will experience,
Okay.
like how fast the app is, how accurate it is, whether it works on iOS and Android,
Okay.
and how much space it takes up on your phone.
Okay, so those are all very important things, especially like if I'm at the airport, I need the app to load quickly.
Exactly.
I need to know like right away.
It can't be a big, bulky app.
Right.
And they've got it all covered. They've thought about all that.
So how did they break down all the different tasks involved?
Okay, so they used something called a work breakdown structure, or WBS.
Okay.
And basically, they took the project and broke it down into all these smaller tasks, kind of like a to-do list for the whole project. And so they broke it down into two main branches.
Okay.
Project management activities and product development activities.
Okay, so the project management stuff is like the behind-the-scenes stuff.
Exactly like creating a charter, a scope, a budget, and thinking about potential risks.
And then the product development stuff is like the actual making of the app.
Exactly. Things like conducting user research, defining the features, and planning the deployment and testing.
So that's how they made sure that they didn't miss anything, right?
Right. By breaking it all down.
Yeah, okay.
It ensures that nothing's overlooked.
Right, and it prevents any overlap.
Exactly.
Like two people doing the same thing.
Or two people waiting on each other to do a task.
Got it, okay.
And then to make sure that everybody knows who's doing what they used, a responsibility assignment matrix, or RAM.
Okay, what is that?
It's a tool to define the roles and responsibilities of each team member.
Okay.
For every single task. And they use the RECI model.
What is that, RECI?
RECI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed.
So like who's actually doing the work, who's making sure it gets done, who needs to be asked about it, and who just needs to know what's going on.
Exactly.
That's helpful.
Yes, and in this project, Ryan Kirby is the project manager.
Okay.
Which means he's accountable for the overall success of the project.
Got it. Okay.
So by using this matrix, they really reduced confusion and made sure that everybody knows exactly what their job is.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about the timeline?
They used Microsoft Project to create their schedule,
okay,
which spans 12 weeks,
okay,
and includes some buffer time for things like reviews, meetings, approvals.
So they're not cutting it too close.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they also highlighted all their major milestones. And the proposal says that they've already met all of those milestones for this planning phase.
Okay.
So they're right on track.
So they're not messing around.
No, they're not.
They're serious about this.
Very serious.
Okay, cool. What about the money?
All right, so the budget.
Yes.
The proposal states that the budget cap is $200,000.
For the whole thing?
For the execution phase. So that's the development, design, testing, and the launch of the app.
Okay, that's not bad, actually.
No, it's not bad.
For an app.
Especially since they're not using any crazy new technology.
Right, right.
So they're allocating about 60% of that budget to the building and the validation of the app itself.
Okay.
The rest is for things like design, testing, change management, and a contingency fund.
So they're thinking ahead?
They're planning for everything.
Which is good. That's how you have a successful project.
Right.
Okay.
They also outline their main risks.
Okay.
So the first risk is scope creep, which is basically when a project just keeps growing and growing, and they end up trying to do too much.
It's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if it did this? And then, oh, wouldn't it be cool if it did that? And then all of a sudden, you've got this giant
monster of an app.
Monster, yeah.
Exactly. So to mitigate that risk, they're using something called a minimum viable product.
Okay.
Or MVP.
Okay.
Which is like the bare bones version of the app.
The most essential features.
Exactly, the must-haves.
Okay.
And they've also written really detailed user stories.
Okay.
Which is a way of defining what the user wants to do with the app.
Okay.
So that helps them to stay focused.
Got it.
The next risk is technical limitations with the phone scanning.
Okay.
So to address that, they're sticking with proven methods for the camera and the augmented reality stuff.
Okay.
And then the last risk is user resistance.
Okay.
Some people might just not want to use an app to measure their luggage.
Yeah, like older folks or people who aren't as tech savvy.
All right, so they're going to make the app as user-friendly as possible.
Right.
Really clean interface, step-by-step instructions, that kind of thing.
Okay, so they've really thought about all the things that could go wrong.
Yes, they have.
And they've got a plan for each one.
Yes.
Okay, that's very impressive. What about changes? Like what happens if they need to make changes to the project along the way?
They have a formal change management process.
Okay, so it's not just like, oh, we decided to do this now.
No, it's very structured.
Okay.
So any proposed changes have to undergo an impact review.
Okay.
They're going to look at how the change affects the schedule, the budget, the deliverables. So
they make sure that one small change doesn't completely derail the project.
Exactly.
Okay, good. That's smart. So what about communication? How are they going to keep everybody informed about what's going on?
Okay, so they've outlined their communication strategy.
Okay.
And they've identified all their key stakeholders.
Okay.
So that includes the course instructor, the mentor, and of course the project team. And the mentor is actually going to act as different executives from Vital Tech Corporation.
Oh, wow.
So like the CEO, the VP of product development.
So this is like a real-world simulation.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So their plan is to provide weekly status reports.
Okay.
They're going to keep detailed minutes of all their meetings with the mentor.
Okay.
And they're going to have a shared cloud folder so everybody can access the files and track the progress.
So transparency is key here.
Exactly. Everybody knows what's going on.
Okay.
And they're going to tailor the communication frequency and format to each stakeholder.
Okay.
So some people might need more information than others.
Okay.
And they also have a plan for how to escalate issues and get approvals for changes.
Okay. So it's a very well thought out communication plan.
It is.
Okay.
Very impressive.
It is. And it's working because they said in the proposal that this plan has been instrumental in keeping the project on track.
Good.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key takeaways that you got from this proposal? Well, one of the most important things is that they realized how valuable those user interviews were.
Right.
It really helped them to understand the problem.
Okay.
They also learned that the RDCI model really helped them to stay organized and efficient.
Okay.
And they also learned that using templates and project management tools,
Like Microsoft Project.
Microsoft Project, yes.
Okay.
Those are really, really helpful for keeping everything on track.
So they're walking away with some valuable lessons
They are.
that they can apply to future projects.
Exactly.
Okay. So what's next for them if they get the approval to actually move forward with this?
So the next steps are going to be to define the user interface requirements.
Okay.
They need to validate the scanning technology.
Make sure it actually works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they need to get everything ready to hand off to the development team.
Okay. So they're basically ready to go
They are.
if they get that green light.
Exactly.
So overall, what are your thoughts on this proposal?
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think they have a really solid plan.
They've done their research.
They have.
They've thought about everything.
Everything.
I like it.
And I think it has the potential to really help travelers.
Yeah, I think so too.
And save them some money.
Yeah, and stress.
Definitely stress.
All right, so listeners, I want you to think about the last time you were like struggling to fit your bag into that little sizer at the airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much would you have paid to have this app in that moment?
Right.
So that's something to think about, and we will be back with another deep dive soon.
See you then.